The sky was clear that afternoon, not a cloud in sight, the kind of Mississippi day where the heat rises from the earth like prayers nobody wants to hear. Robert Johnson sat on the porch of a weathered juke joint outside Clarksdale, his guitar resting against the wooden rail. The strings hadn't been touched yet. The air was still, too still. And then he played the first note. They say the wind came first, low and howling like something waking from a long sleep. Then the sky darkened, not gradually but all at once, as if someone had drawn a curtain across the sun. Within seconds, thunder rolled across the delta like the voice of something ancient and furious. Robert kept playing, and the storm kept building. Some who were there swear the two were connected. Others just ran for cover, but everyone remembered one thing. The storm began the exact moment Robert Johnson touched those strings. I'm your guide through the shadows and echoes of the blues, the stories that live between the notes, the legends that refuse to die. This is Soul Chronicles, and tonight we're stepping into one of the strangest, most unsettling accounts ever whispered about Robert Johnson. A day when nature itself seemed to respond to his music. A day when witnesses couldn't tell where the song ended and the storm began. Was it coincidence? Was it something darker? Or was Robert Johnson so deeply connected to forces beyond this world that even the sky had to answer when he called? Few know what really happened that day. The ones who were there are long gone, but the story, the feeling, the fear, it survived. And it's been passed down through generations of blues musicians who still won't play certain chords at certain times because they remember what happened when Robert did. Before we go deeper into this storm, make sure you're subscribed to Soul Chronicles and hit that notification bell, because every story here carries a piece of the soul, a fragment of the mystery, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever felt music change the atmosphere around you? Because after this story, you might start paying closer attention. It was late summer, 1936. The exact date has been lost to time, but the season is remembered because of the heat. The Mississippi Delta in August is unforgiving. The earth cracks, the air shimmers, and people move slow, saving their energy for the night when the juke joints open and the music starts. Robert Johnson had been traveling. He'd been gone for months, some say a year. And when he came back, he was different, not just in skill, though that was obvious to anyone who heard him, but in presence, in the way he carried himself. There was a weight to him now, something people couldn't name but could feel when he walked into a room. He arrived at a small juke joint on the outskirts of Clarksdale, a place with no name, just a shack with a porch and a dirt floor inside. The owner, a man named Samuel, knew Robert from before. He'd heard him play a year earlier, heard him struggle with the strings, heard him try and fail to keep up with the older musicians. But when Robert walked in that day, Samuel barely recognized him. Not his face, that was the same, but his eyes. They were distant, focused on something no one else could see. Robert didn't say much. He never did. He asked if he could play that evening, and Samuel nodded. Word spread fast. By late afternoon, people started gathering. Not because Robert was famous, he wasn't, not yet. But because rumors had been traveling with him. Rumors that he'd learned something, that he'd gone somewhere, that his playing could do things music wasn't supposed to do. The crowd wasn't large. Maybe 30 people, sitting on crates and barrels, leaning against the walls, fanning themselves in the oppressive heat. The sky above was a perfect, cloudless blue. The sun hung heavy and still. There wasn't even a breeze. The air was thick, almost solid. Robert stepped onto the porch around 4 in the afternoon. He didn't speak to the crowd. He didn't tune his guitar for long. He just sat down, closed his eyes for a moment, and then his fingers touched the strings. The first note rang out clear and sharp, cutting through the stillness like a blade. And that's when the wind came. It wasn't gradual. It didn't build. 1 second, the air was dead calm. The next, a gust of wind tore across the clearing, kicking up dust and rattling the tin roof of the juke joint. People looked up, confused. The sky was still blue, there were no clouds, but the wind kept blowing harder now, whipping through the trees, bending them like they were made of paper. Robert kept playing. His fingers moved across the fretboard with impossible speed, hitting notes that seemed to echo longer than they should, that seemed to vibrate in the chest and the bones. The melody was mournful, aching, but underneath it was something else, something that made your skin crawl, something that felt like a warning. Then the sky began to change, not slowly, but in the span of a single breath. Clouds appeared from nowhere, rolling in from every direction at once, thick and black and low. The blue sky was swallowed whole, the temperature dropped, the wind turned cold, and still Robert played. People started murmuring, looking at each other, looking at the sky, looking at Robert. Someone shouted, asking if they should go inside, but no one moved. They couldn't, because as terrifying as the sudden storm was, the music was more powerful. It held them there, rooted to the ground, unable to look away from the man on the porch whose eyes were still closed, whose face showed no fear, no surprise, nothing but concentration. Thunder rumbled, deep and rolling, shaking the earth beneath their feet. Lightning flashed, jagged and bright, splitting the sky open. The rain came next, not as drops, but as a wall of water, drenching everything in seconds. The crowd scattered, running for cover, ducking into the juke joint, huddling under the eaves. But Robert didn't move. He stayed on the porch, rain pouring over him, soaking his clothes, his hair, his guitar, and he kept playing. The storm raged around him like it was alive, like it was listening, like it was responding to every note he played. Samuel watched from the doorway, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. He'd seen storms before. Mississippi had no shortage of them. But this was different. This wasn't natural. The way it appeared, the timing, the intensity. He looked at Robert, still sitting on the porch, rain streaming down his face, his fingers never stopping, never hesitating. And Samuel thought, not for the first time, that Robert Johnson had brought something back with him from wherever he'd been, something that didn't belong in this world. The storm lasted as long as Robert played, 20 minutes, maybe longer. The wind howled, the thunder roared, the lightning struck so close that people could smell the burning ozone in the air. And then, just as suddenly as it began, Robert stopped. His hands lifted from the strings. The final note hung in the air for a moment, then faded, and the storm stopped. The wind died. The rain ceased. The thunder went silent. The clouds began to break apart, dissolving as quickly as they'd formed, revealing patches of blue sky and the late afternoon sun. People emerged from the juke joint slowly, cautiously, like they weren't sure it was safe. The ground was soaked, puddles everywhere. The trees were bent and broken, but the storm was gone. Robert sat on the porch, drenched, his guitar still in his hands. He opened his eyes and looked out at the crowd. His expression was calm, tired maybe, but calm. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't seem afraid. It was as if he'd expected it, as if he'd done it before. Samuel approached him carefully. "Robert," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What was that? What just happened?" Robert looked at him for a long moment, water dripping from his hair, his clothes. Then he smiled just a little and said, "That's the sound I've been looking for." He stood up, slinging his guitar over his shoulder, and walked off the porch, past the stunned crowd, down the muddy road, disappearing into the distance like a ghost. He didn't play another note that day. He didn't need to. The story spread like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone in Clarksdale had heard about it. The storm that came out of nowhere. The man who played guitar while the sky tore itself apart. The music that seemed to control the weather. Some dismissed it as exaggeration, a coincidence. A freak storm that just happened to hit at the wrong time. But those who were there, who saw it with their own eyes, who felt the wind and heard the thunder and watched Robert play through it all, they knew better. They knew something impossible had happened, something that couldn't be explained away, and they were scared. Because if Robert Johnson could call down a storm with his guitar, what else could he do? What else had he learned? What price had he paid for that knowledge? In the weeks that followed, more stories emerged. Other musicians who'd crossed paths with Robert reported similar incidents. A guitarist in Helena said Robert played at a riverside gathering and the water started rising, not slowly, but fast, like something was pushing it from below. They had to leave in a hurry, and the flood receded the moment Robert stopped playing. A harmonica player in Rosedale claimed he saw Robert perform in a barn, and every single candle in the place went out at the exact moment he hit a certain chord. They sat in darkness for the rest of the song, and when he finished, the candles all reignited at once, flames shooting up like they'd been dipped in gasoline. A woman in Tunica swore that when Robert played outside her house, the stars started moving, not twinkling, moving, rearranging themselves in patterns she'd never seen before. She locked her doors and prayed until he left. Were these stories true? Were they embellishments? Or were they the desperate attempts of people trying to make sense of something that defied sense? It's impossible to say. But what is certain is that Robert Johnson had become more than just a musician. He had become something else, something feared and revered in equal measure. There's a blues tradition, old as the music itself, that says certain songs can open doors. Not literal doors, but doors between worlds, between the living and the dead, between this reality and others. The old bluesmen knew this. They were careful about what they played and when they played it. They knew that music wasn't just entertainment, it was power, it was conjuring, it was magic. And Robert Johnson, whether intentionally or not, had tapped into that power in a way few ever had. Some say he learned it at the crossroads, that the man who met him there didn't just teach him how to play, but taught him how to use the music as a weapon, as a tool, as a key. Others believe Robert was naturally gifted, that he was born with a connection to forces most people never even sense, that his sensitivity to the spiritual world allowed him to channel things through his music that others couldn't. Either way, the result was the same. When Robert Johnson played, things happened, the world responded, and not always in ways people were comfortable with. Dr. Richard Collins, a folklorist who spent years studying the blues and its mystical elements, once said in an interview that Robert Johnson represented the purest expression of the blues as a supernatural force. Collins believed that the blues was never just music. It was a ritual, a summoning, an invocation of pain, loss, and yearning so powerful that it could tear holes in the fabric of reality. He argued that Robert Johnson had perfected this, whether consciously or not, and that his music was so emotionally and spiritually potent that it literally affected the physical world around him. Collins said, "When you listen to Robert Johnson's recordings, even now, decades after his death, you can feel something beneath the surface, something alive, something watching. It's not just sound, it's presence." Collins also noted that many of the musicians who played with Robert or who heard him live refused to talk about him later in life. Not because they'd forgotten, but because they were afraid that speaking his name, remembering too clearly, might bring back whatever had been following him, might open doors that should stay closed. The storm that day in Clarksdale became legend, but it was more than just a good story. It was a turning point. After that day, Robert's reputation changed. He was no longer just another traveling bluesman trying to make a name. He was the man who played with the storm, the man whose music could bend the world. Invitations to play dried up in some places. People were too scared. But in others, the invitations multiplied, because some people wanted to see it for themselves, wanted to witness the impossible, wanted to test whether the stories were true. Robert obliged sometimes. He played when he wanted to, where he wanted to, for whoever would listen. But those who saw him during this period all reported the same thing. The atmosphere changed when he played. The air got heavier, shadows moved in ways they shouldn't, and there was always a feeling, lurking just beneath the music, that something was watching, listening. waiting. But here's the question nobody could answer then, and nobody can answer now. Was Robert in control? Did he summon the storm that day, or did it summon him? Did his music call to forces beyond this world? Or did those forces call to him using his hands, his voice, his guitar as a conduit? Because if you listen to the recordings he made, the ones that survived, there's something in them that doesn't quite fit. A resonance, a frequency, something that feels older than Robert, older than the blues, older than America itself, something primal and vast and hungry. And if that's true, if Robert Johnson wasn't the master but the instrument, then what was playing him? What was using his genius, his pain, his soul to reach into this world, and what did it want? The storm in Clarksdale was never explained. No meteorologist could account for it. No weather records showed any system moving through the area that day. It appeared, it raged, it vanished, and the only constant was the man on the porch with the guitar. The man who kept playing while the world fell apart around him. The man who smiled when it was over, like he'd just finished a conversation with an old friend. People who were there never forgot. They carried the memory with them for the rest of their lives. And when they told the story, usually late at night, usually in wished voices, they all said the same thing. It wasn't the storm that scared them. It was the look on Robert's face, the calmness, the certainty, the knowing. Because he knew the storm was coming. He knew it would stop when he stopped. He knew because he was the one who brought it. Or maybe, just maybe, he was the one being brought. In the months after that day, Robert Johnson continued to travel, continued to play, continued to leave a trail of impossible stories in his wake. But something was changing in him. Those who saw him toward the end said he looked tired, haunted, like he was carrying a weight that was finally starting to crush him. He played with the same skill, the same intensity, but there was a sadness now, a resignation, as if he'd realized something he couldn't undo, as if he'd made a choice or had a choice made for him, and now the bill was coming due. He died less than 2 years after the storm in Clarksdale. Poisoned, they said, murdered at a juke joint by a jealous husband. He was 27 years old. But his death was as strange and contested as his life. Some say he died in agony, clawing at the walls, speaking in tongues, seeing things no one else could see. Others say he went quietly, peacefully, like he'd been expecting it, like he was ready. And there are those who believe he didn't die at all, that he walked away from his body the same way he walked away from that porch after the storm. That he's still out there somewhere, playing his guitar, calling down storms, opening doors, searching for the sound that will finally set him free. The recordings he left behind are few, only 29 songs. But they changed music forever. They influenced generations. They became the foundation of rock and roll, of modern blues, of everything that came after. And if you listen closely, if you turn the volume up and let the scratches and the static fade away, you can still hear it. That thing beneath the music, that presence, that power. The same power that brought the storm to Clarksdale, the same power that made the sky go dark and the wind howl and the rain fall like judgment. It's still there, waiting, listening, and maybe, just maybe, waiting for someone else to play the right notes, to open the door again, to call it back into this world. So here's the real question, the one that keeps me awake at night, the one that drives this channel and everything we explore here. What if the storm wasn't a one-time event? What if it's still happening? What if every time someone plays those songs, every time someone truly connects with the blues the way Robert did, they're calling to the same force he called to? What if the storm never really ended? What if it's just been waiting, patient and silent, for someone to play it back into existence? Because the blues has always been about more than music. It's about pain and power. It's about loss and longing. It's about the space between the living and the dead, the seen and the unseen. And Robert Johnson lived in that space. He breathed it. He played it. And for one afternoon in Mississippi, he made the whole world see it too. The storm began the moment Robert Johnson played his guitar. That much is certain, but maybe the real question isn't why the storm came. Maybe it's why it left. Because storms like that, storms born from music and magic and forces beyond comprehension, they don't just disappear. They wait, they watch, they remember, and they're always listening for the next player brave enough or foolish enough to call them back. Robert knew this. I think that's why he smiled. Not because he was proud, but because he knew the storm wasn't his to control. It never was. He was just the one who opened the door, and once a door like that is opened, it never truly closes. If this story sent chills down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe to Soul Chronicles, because we're just getting started. There are more stories like this, more mysteries, more souls who touched something beyond this world and paid the price. Drop a comment and let me know, do you believe music can change reality? Or was Robert Johnson just a man in the wrong place at the right time? Because after tonight, I think you know the answer. The storm is still out there, and it's still listening, always listening, waiting for the next note, the next player, the next soul willing to pay the price. And when that moment comes, when the sky goes dark and the wind starts to howl and the thunder rolls across the delta like the voice of something ancient and hungry, remember this story. Remember Robert Johnson. Remember the day the storm began, because it never really ended. It's just been waiting for you to pick up the guitar.